recently had the pleasure of sitting down with Margaret Winslow, author of Smartass. It's a heartfelt, engaging story about what happened to this burnt-out college professor when she decided to adopt her donkey, Caleb. I hope you'll enjoy the interview. So let's talk about your book, Smartass. How did you come about and decide to write a book about a donkey?
Well, after I acquired him, I did not acquire him to write a book. I was writing other books, which were travel, adventure books related to my work as a geologist in the field. And but when I started pitching my travel books at writers' conferences to agents, I was dutifully pitching my travel books. But then when we went out for drinks in the evening, I was regaling them with stories about my new donkey, Caleb. And they were saying, "Oh, there's a book in there. You've got to write a book about it." And it took a few years before I actually started writing things down. And actually, the first chapter I wrote, I was at a writers' conference. Once again, it was focusing on travel writing. And I was feeling rebellious or something, but I wrote the first story about the donkey. That was 10 years ago. And people loved it because it was the only funny story in the group. And I started to write when I had time. I was very busy with my career. I taught geology for 30 years at the City University of New York, and so I didn't have too much time, but I started to collect some stories and add to them. And then when I took early retirement, I started writing more of them. And by the way, 2 weeks after I wrote that very first story, I was diagnosed with cancer. And because this is relevant, we were waiting hours and hours for surgery, and I hadn't had anything to eat or drink in 19 hours. And my friend and my husband were sitting with me, and I pulled out this first story that I'd written. I'd actually printed it out. And they started cracking up. I mean, the staff actually had to tell us could we quiet it down a little bit. So I wasn't thinking about surgery, I was thinking about the donkey.
So there's a story behind the title, Smartass. What is it? I gotta know.
Well, the title came to me before I had written too many chapters, and actually it comes from the only donkey joke I've ever had, and that I used to tell people all the time, which was, why don't they send donkeys to college? Because nobody loves a smartass. Okay, so anyway, so I wanted this to be the title early on. My agent was uncomfortable. It thought it was a little bit too edgy and, sounds like an epithet. But the thing is, donkeys throughout history have been underestimated. Now, all the recent cognitive studies have shown that they are a lot smarter than horses. Sorry, horse people, but they are. And but they were thought to be stupid because they would take so much longer to learn, and the reason they took so much longer to learn is they didn't want to do what their owners wanted them to do, and which is where they get the reputation for being stubborn. Donkey owners, we never say that donkeys are stubborn. They're circumspect, cautious, thoughtful. They like to solve problems at their own rate. But we never say that they're stubborn, even when we're trying to pull them out of the way of traffic coming down the road. So anyway, because they're so intelligent, I really wanted this to be the title of the book. And it took me a few months to convince my agent. And by making it into two separate words, which was the idea of the publisher, two separate words, and then the white matching the donkey, we got the smart and the animal name on separate lines. So I think it makes the point much better than the original one word.
In what ways has Caleb changed your life, your life's outlook?
He's changed it enormously. I think when I first got him, I had visions of long trail rides and hiking, and I wouldn't have to carry a pack anymore because of back problems, and our life has gone in a completely different direction. One is he was not he had had a little bit of saddle training when he was too young, around age 2.5, and I acquired him at age 4, and he had been a guard donkey for sheep and goats for a woman who weaver and a cheesemaker, and so he had not been ridden much at all, and so the challenge was to try to get him from point A to B, which could have been from his stall to the paddock and back or anything. I had to really start from scratch with him. And Caleb had his own ideas about what we would do when, and I pretty much did everything wrong. I'd look up the sort of the training method of the month online. I would try it, different vocabulary, clickers and various types of special bridles. And it took a long time for me to realize that he was going to train me. And I also realized that in many ways he, besides being a foil and a antagonist in a way, that he's really a mirror of me in terms of not wanting to openly confront and yet being very tenacious about what I believe in and what I want to do, and that he wanted an equal and not a master. I was never very good at being an alpha with any of my animals, and I did not want to be the alpha, but the trainers kept telling me, you've got to be the alpha, you've got a 700-pound animal, you've got to be the boss. Otherwise you're not going to be able to do anything with him. You can't win a tug of war with a large farm animal. But I didn't want to be the to break him in the traditional sense, break his spirit. And it probably took 4 times as long to train him for riding and for shows, because I wouldn't or couldn't lay down the law or punish him, and I wanted to use positive reinforcement. So he really made me reach deep inside to bring out the very best of, what is the best way to do this, or we are partners in this. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And along the way, of course, he played games with me left and right, and some of the cognitive scientists they're all coming around actually in terms of animal behavior. The things that they used to say was just projection by the owner. Oh, you think he's sad, or you think he's grieving, or you think he's laughing at you. But they actually do all of those things, and I believed it, that he intentionally would size me up and do things wrong, or not at all. I'd set up a series of traffic cones for him to zigzag through, and he would pick up one traffic cone and toss it this way, and then take another one, trot over to the fence and throw that one over, and I couldn't help but laugh, and the trainers were furious, and they said, you're letting him get away with this, but I couldn't help it. It was like, well, I would do the same thing if I was bored. Then what's the point of this? Mm-hmm. And so I learned.
That's the phrase mirror and foil.
Yes.
What's the number one thing you hope readers will take away from your book, Smartass?
Well, if I can say more than one, I hope that they'll enjoy reading it and will laugh in the funny parts, and if not cry, at least be moved by the less than funny parts. But this book is not just for donkey owners. And it's not even for people who love horses. I think anyone who loves animals, but even more than that, anyone who has had a relationship with another being where they didn't understand each other right away, but they both wanted to understand each other. A friend of mine adopted, she actually encouraged me on this book because she adopted a little girl from the Ukraine, and they had some of the same things, and she said, it's a universal thing. wanting to be close and relate to another being. And so I think that people will, like I said, be entertained and laugh and things like that, and they'll learn something about donkeys and how different they are from horses without it being a textbook. But I hope that they'll be moved and perhaps even inspired by the uniqueness of my donkey, or donkeys in general, but also be moved by how hard we both tried to reach each other.
And make that heartfelt connection.
And make that heartfelt connection.
Mm-hmm.